Region 8 and thank you, Kate. And Region 2, you can use the QR code or sign in. And Region 2, Kate and her team have been so wonderful to offer certificates for us. So they will be handling that end of it.
And Region 1, we are just using your Zoom sign in. So we don't need to do a separate.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
If you could go ahead and mute, that would be helpful, just so we can make sure we can hear for those just joining. Thank you.
Great. And Kate, if you want to run us through what our plan is for today, that would be great.
Sure, that'd be great. So today is just an overview of our local literacy plan and just really understanding the components of the district literacy plan and thinking about the team members that you're going to bring to the table as you work through and write your local literacy plan, whether you're in the process of just creating it or you need to revise your local literacy plan, thinking about the team members that you're going to bring to the table. And then really also thinking about which district data you want to bring to the table as you dig into to help write your local literacy plan. So what district do we really need to look at when we come back to the table to help formulate our goals? And then also just thinking about how do we write SMART goals that's going to align with our data. So those are our objectives for the day. And we allotted 2 hours. If we don't use 2 hours, that's okay. We're going to stay, the 3 of us will stay present to answer any questions that you have, district specifics. We, again, put 2 hours of our time for you today. So those are our objectives. And then moving forward, like Pam said in the beginning, some of you are required to write your reading achievement plan. And what we went ahead and did is put the criteria. If you were required to write a reading achievement plan, your district did receive a letter from the Department of Educational Workforce, and you did also receive the new template. They did just come out with a new template, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Other districts are required to write a writing improvement plan, and what we did is went ahead and put the criteria on the screen for you. And then others, like Pam said, it is just best practice to have a local literacy plan. Please note the templates are they're all the same, so there's not separate templates for the local literacy plan. So we wanted to provide you with this information. And we're happy to share these slides with you after the presentation. I know sometimes as we're working through it, things get a little tricky. And so we're happy to provide this information after the presentation. We will send this to you via email. So these are kind of the requirements moving forward. And then we want to hear from you this morning, and we want to know what your experience as far as writing a local literacy plan. So is this the first time your district has written a local literacy plan? You've reviewed available resources, but you just need a little guidance. You've completed a plan, but it needs updating. Or we've completed a district literacy plan that we are implementing in our district. So what we would love for you to do is just use your stamping tool down at the bottom in your toolbox and just stamp where you are as far as your local literacy plan within your district. So I'm just going to give you a minute to go ahead and do that and to see where you are as a district.
So you'll go to annotate.
Yep, thank you.
Yep. To find that, you'll go to annotate, and then there'll be a little check mark, and you can choose if you want a check mark, if you want a star, if you want a smiley face, you can pick your own stamping tool.
So mine was on the left-hand side. It looked like a little pencil is where your annotation tool was for the stamping feature.
This is wonderful because although as RELs and with all our conversations with the Department of Ed, we have a lot of the knowledge, but you have the boots on the ground experience. And there's so many of you who've already completed a plan but needs updating that on your side of the screen, that's where all the knowledge is and professionalism and all the information. So this is why it'll be a great workshop, and you'll be able to work with your colleagues on this. Megan,
Oh,
very
thanks.
great. You
Thanks,
just need to
Megan.
update.
And some of you, as I'm kind of processing through this, you might be implementing and it needs updating. So I was kind of looking at the bottom too, and I'm like, oh, maybe we should have reworded that. So I'm sure some of you are implementing, but as we work through it, it does need updating. Thanks, Debbie. And as you can move on to the next one. Thank you.
And if you're a newbie, not a problem. We're here to hold your hand and get you into groups that can help you with it. So if you have this district literacy plan, for each component, what we're really going to have you, if somebody can clear the screen. For each component, we're going to have you consider, is this something that needs to be updated? We're not looking to give you more work. We're not looking for another plan. Are these action steps that you can go ahead and say, yes, it's done? Or do we need to have those discussions and say, why isn't it done? And what can we do to overcome those barriers? We're also going to be integrating Ohio dyslexia support laws, with so many of your teachers have already been through the training. We're going to certainly incorporate all of our knowledge about the RIMP requirements, those moving on from grade 4, and those high quality instructional materials. On the next slide, we've offered, I'm not quite certain who's host here, if it's Nick, and if you can clear screen from the annotation, but on the next slide, we've offered some resources for you.
Hang on, Pam, I want to pause for just a second. I'm trying to get the annotations off.
Maybe if you tried stop sharing your screen and then share again, that might clear it out.
I got it. Thanks.
I am so glad you two are the hosts and I don't have to worry about the tech today. Thank you.
It was my friend Sarah, our other literacy consultant. Did you hear me whispering? I'm like, help me. So thanks.
See, it takes a village, guys, and we're here to help you in that village. There's an awful lot of resources available to you that we have listed. You've got Ohio's Plan to Raise Literacy Achievement, which if you are not familiar with, you may not have well-loved tagged copies on your bedside table like the three of us, but you should be familiar with them. You should be familiar with the IES practice guides, which we'll go through, and then the Reading Achievement Plan, the template the state has provided. And also, if our, I want to say the runner, who's ever organizing the screens right now, if you can hit that Padlet link, please. Great. We have put everything in a Padlet. So you'll have the link to the Padlet, you'll get your slides. But if you see in there, we have included an awful lot of information from ODE. It's all linked in one place. So no panic here. You just have to get to the Padlet and you'll find what you need. There's links for our next meetings in here. And as we begin to work together as a network and create tools for you, we will be adding them to this Padlet. We will do it chronologically. That seems like the most organized way for us. So that will be available to you and your teams at all times. Okay, Ohio's language and literacy vision. If I want to say, if you haven't been living under a rock, but if you've been out in the world at all in the state of Ohio, you know that Governor DeWine has made reading his big lever here. So our Ohio language and literacy vision is the department is urging all districts and schools to use evidence-based systems and high quality instruction to employ those culturally responsive practices. We know now that the science of reading, it's no longer just something, it's not the new pendulum. It is how all brains learn to read. Structured literacy, which you've heard so much about, is the actual how of it. So reading science or science of reading is the why, and structured literacy is the how. We are not getting political in here at all. There's reading practices that work for some students. We are talking about high yield strategies that we know with evidence work for all students. On the next slide, I think this is the crux of it. And those of you that are familiar with this simple view of reading will recognize this graphic. This is Ohio's plan to raise literacy. This came about in a room about 6 or 7 years ago with Shauna Benson from O'Callaghan and Stephanie Van Dyke, who was from 8, then went up to 3, and is now with the state. But we talked about the capacity of all professionals. That's your teachers, your aides, your parapros, your almost your volunteers, but definitely you as admin and instructional leaders, what you know about language and literacy, and all learners. It's multiplying all learners represented there. That's across the spectrum, those that may need extra support and those that deserve to be challenged. And it's only when we multiply those two components will we know that all students can read to their highest potential. And that's truly what Ohio's plan to raise literacy is about. And with that, I think we're ready to go into the next section here.
Pam, I love that so much. And Debbie, if you want to move on to the next one, what's really neat too, and you'll see this evidenced in the new plan, these are the key components that every plan must include. They have the asterisks, and as you go, number 1, right when you see on there is that culturally responsive practice. And we'll talk about that on the next slide. And that's just making sure that we're including everybody. And I love that. And so you can see too, like the development process for monitoring, we're going to be talking about that. The alignment between plans, we're also going to be talking about that. And why is this even needed? Why do we even need to talk about having a plan within our district? Again, looking at those goals and then creating action. So not just putting things on paper, having the conversation, but really setting timelines of when is this going to take place? What materials do we need? What support do our teachers need? Professional development and so forth. And digging kind of deep into those conversations and thinking about how we're going to monitor all these great things that we're going to be put in place. So it's actually pretty exciting to be having these conversations within our district. It's good stuff. Let's go ahead and continue. I want to show you the difference. The old plan that was in place in the past is on the left-hand side, and then the new template that just came out is on the right-hand side. And you can see we just kind of highlighted the difference between the two. One of the main sections that was taken out was there was a spot that had the mission, and vision, and that has been taken out. There's basically the same components in both, as you can see. Again, one of the big added thing is that culturally responsive practices in the new section, which is really exciting. Do you ladies have anything else to add as far as the crosswalk goes that I may be missing?
The only thing I might mention in your your bright pink highlights, the analysis of relevant student performance data. If you have a preschool, you need to have them included in this plan. This is pre-K through 12. So this isn't just starting at K. And I see Twan from Akron there nodding your head. Thank you. Definitely. You've got to get your ELP there. So your preschools need to be included in this plan.
I just have a question. You said earlier that there wasn't, I'm working on the plan right now with our team. When you're saying there's no mission and vision, I thought that on the plan that there was a component that had mission and visions as the first part, the first question.
So there you'll have the conversation about the mission and vision. There was actually a section in the old plan that had mission and vision, and so that has been taken out. But you're still going to be having conversations about the purpose and things of the plan. Sorry for that.
Right, because it does say mission vision as part.
Yes, at the top. In the old one, there was actually a section that had that
Section
component.
1
So
and
that
4,
looks so that part looks a little bit different. Thank you for that clarification.
Thanks, Twan.
And I'm glad you said PK because I have PK to 12 on the plan.
Yes. So clarification for that too. For RAPS, the requirement is the pre-K 3, and our direction, kind of like the gold star, is to include your entire district, right? And so making sure that we're talking like all means all. But there's a little tweak in the requirements as far as the law goes, as far as what's required.
Thank you, Kate.
And again, the next piece, you will be getting a copy. I think that question came up in the chat. You will definitely be getting a copy of this presentation. And again, there is some directive. We are putting a link in there as far as that culturally responsive practice goes. There's more direction on the department website as far as guidance for districts to obtain more information. So we just wanted to provide that. Yes, we do have on that resource. I don't know, ladies, if we want to go ahead and share. I know some people may be wanting to look at the current template as we talk. I saw that just come up too. So I don't know if you want to send that after, or I think
Why
that
don't we
question
share
just
that
came
at
up.
the question section, or maybe
Okay.
I'm sure we'll be done before the 2 hours. So
Okay.
this is just the overview. This is kind of giving you ideas, jot down with your sticky notes, and then we will go into deep, deep detail and answer every question. We're on until you're satisfied.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we are at the question. Nick, I'll go ahead and let you, you've been monitoring the question piece. So I'll go ahead and let you share some of those questions that may be in the chat, if you would.
Right now,
Right now.
that the only question really was about the updated template. That was, and then I think that the part about the mission and vision was also answered. So I can, I have the template. I can try and throw that in the chat here soon.
That, or if you can throw the Padlet link, the template is in the Padlet also under DEW resources. So that's available. But we don't want you to get lost in the template right now. We'd rather just give you all the info, take your notes, and then if there's any questions, like I said, then we can go by it piece by piece if you'd like.
Sounds good.
But of course, however this works best for you and your team is the way we'll work it.
Yeah, and please let us
Okay,
know
if there's
if
no
you,
questions, let's move on.
and please let us know if you are not seeing the template. We want to make sure that you can get it so that you can look at it and follow along if that's easier for you. So Nick is putting that in the chat for us. If you didn't receive it with your district, we'll make sure you have it here today. So we're going to begin working through this template, and this is where the work is going to begin. We're going to go through this section by section. So section 1 addresses district leadership team, who is going to be a member and who's going to be part of that team. You may call it a multidisciplinary team. You may call it something different, but you need a leadership team. This should not be something that you're doing alone. All right, this should be a group effort. We should think about other stakeholders that might be good to bring to the table for a different perspective. You know, do we have any family members or caregivers that might be a good addition to the table to get that perspective of what it's like on the home front for the services that their children are receiving? Are there community partners that you're working with that might be also good to bring to the table of how they can support literacy efforts in your communities? We'll also be developing the process and the plan with that team all together. And along with developing the plan, I think a critical piece that often gets missed is that really intentional planning of how we're going to implement it and monitor it and know if it's successful or not. You know, back at the very beginning, Pam mentioned how this is really best practice. We're really not talking about compliance at this point. There are children at the other side of this whose lives are going to be affected by this work. And so it is really just best practice. And I really feel like there's a sense of urgency around it. So on the template, there's a part where you can start listing who would be a good fit. So if you haven't created your team, who do you want at the table? Making sure that all students are represented. Do we have people from our special ed department? Do we have people from our curriculum department? Maybe we need people from our IT department to kind of be thinking about, do we have services and supports for children? How are we going to get them access to the curriculum? We may need to bring lots of different people alongside us as we're talking about that have different perspectives in this work. So there's a place for you to complete who should be on this team. And there's that delicate balance of having the right amount of partners at the table without having too many. All right, so kind of playing with that as to who you want on your team. We're going to ask that you bring that with you. You have your team already selected when you come back on the 14th, when we start actually working through this plan.
Debbie,
Yes.
may I just remind, not only should we have all departments and all stakeholders represented, but all demographics also. It just makes for a stronger plan throughout.
So I have a question. So the district team, when we have the people on our team, if say I have the superintendent, assistant superintendent on the team, but they can't be there every single time we meet, or I fill them in, I tap people, is that okay to include? Because sometimes the people on our team can't be at every meeting, but I fill them in and get input from them. Is that okay to include it on the district team?
Absolutely. And that will go into what part of this team will be talking about is the communication, not just the communication within the team, which is going to be really important because we know what schedules are like for all of us. We're all running at these frantic paces. And so we do need a way when everybody can't be at the table, how they're going to know what work has happened.
And
What you're
Tuan, this
seeing-
is something you might even consider at your convocation each year, or at some point, make this reading achievement plan available to all Akron City Public School employees, or all of, district employees, and have them sign off. I have read, I am familiar with this. This is a document, it's a living document that should be shared and known by all.
That's a great idea, Pam.
And what you're seeing on your screen is just some examples of who you might think about bringing to the table to be part of this team. It is not an all-inclusive list. You may be thinking differently. And like Pam mentioned before, like, do we have all of our demographics represented as well? Okay.
Just to jump into, like, you think about why would a treasurer need to be involved? And you think about your action steps of professional development and materials. They're important to have at the table to think about those types of resources. So when you think about, I'm thinking about, well, why would they need to be at the table? Those are just, an example of the why.
And from experience, you may want to consider having someone from your collective bargaining group at the table also,
Thank you, Pam.
if you have a union member there.
So when you're thinking about who is going to serve on this, think about the people who can actually provide leadership and guidance and carry out the work. Who are the people that really are good at monitoring progress? Who are the people that would be really good at designing a system so that we can really get this systematic throughout our school districts? Who are the people that can help generate the PD? Who are the people that are going to need to fund if we need to purchase professional development from someone? Who are the people that can think outside the box about getting monies available to do certain things? So just think about all of the strengths of the people that live in your districts and what they can bring to the table to really help move this work forward. The second part of 1 is going to be working on that whole development of the plan, how we're going to monitor the plan, how we're going to communicate the plan, how we're going to determine, is it effective, or do we need to come back and relook? As we've stated, it is a living plan, so it will need to change and grow as our knowledge change, as our demographics change, as our needs change. We're going to need to change along with it. And so it is a living document. So this will be the jobs that this team will be tasked for. It's a big job. It's a big responsibility. And so you need to make sure that you're having the right people working on this with you, alongside you. Any questions about part 1 of the plan?
I have one additional question. So I have a literacy pyramid team that we meet once a month. So on my team, I have teachers on my team. So because teachers, we meet at the district level during the day, our teachers on the team can't meet, right? So I'm going to infuse some of this during the time that we have literacy pyramid, and then I can have them as part of the team because I feel like teachers need to be represented. Is that okay?
Absolutely, please. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know who said it, but someone said, no decisions about us without us. And so, it's really important that we have, it goes beyond buy-in. It goes giving a voice to the teachers that are going to be tasked with doing this work, and making sure that they do have a voice and they bring a unique perspective because they are truly the boots on the ground, doing this work for our kids. So we do need to get their perspectives. Absolutely. I love that. Any other questions or comments that someone would like to offer for the good of the group?
I think you'll see as we work through the plan, teachers' voices, as we continue to talk, their perspectives and how valuable they are. Kind of when we get to root cause, Pamela will be talking about that. So that was really good comment. Thank you. When we move on to section 2, that really talks about alignment between reading achievement plan and really the overall efforts of the district. And what that means is, every district has a one plan, and we don't want all these different siloed plans in your district. And so it's taking the one plan that you have in your district and how does that align with your reading achievement plan? And so every district, there's different cohorts. There's cohort 1, 2, 3. And so wherever you are in that piece, you want to take those goals and have some conversations as you're working through your local literacy plan, and look at those goals and see how they align. And part of your one plan is also that educator equity. And there's a process that you go through in the one plan where you take a survey and you evaluate what that looks like and sounds like within your district. And we put a link at the bottom just to provide you with some more information about that. And so if you go on to the next slide, in your one plan, sometimes those goals in the literacy piece is a little bit more broad. And when you go to write your local literacy plan, it gets a little bit more detailed in what those goals are going to be. And so we just wanted to show you what that would be, but we definitely want to make sure when we're developing our goals that there is this alignment. A lot of times we see these different efforts within districts, and we want to help teachers, the community, show this connection between what we're doing so there's not all these different initiatives going on within our district. And so that's going to be the focus of section 2. So is there any, I don't think, if you want to go ahead on with that piece, Debbie. So that part is pretty simple, but it does take time to go back and look at each of those parts to make sure that those are all connected. So that's really what section 2 is going to be all about. So we'll talk about what you need to bring back for our work sessions. And it's just going to be making sure that you have access to your one plan within your district for our future time together as we're looking at that.
Thanks, Kate. If we move on to section 3, why do we need a reading achievement plan? And I've got a note here for those of you who are looking at DEW's documents. At one point, there was a typo that instead of saying section 3, it was section 4. And we're not quite certain if that has been corrected on the department's part or not. But looking at that reading achievement plan, why is it needed? And to echo what Kate and Debbie said, this is not more work. This should be the same work. Really just pulling apart what you know from your one needs assessment, which you should have a literacy goal. This is looking at why do we need those literacy goals? And why do we need it? We go back to data. It's always what's best for students and data. And Nick, the next slide, is that a question slide again?
I think when slides got moved around, things got a little bit out of order. So I think we'll be okay.
So if we have a question, go ahead and unmute and ask. But here, what we're really looking at, we're getting down to it in section 3, is that learning performance data. So we can do whatever we want and say whatever we want, but until we see what those students are doing, until we're giving them that explicit and intense instruction that they need to improve, we're really not helping. So we need to insert disaggregated student performance data here, and it's got to include, but this is not all that has to be there. It must have your KRA scores, your OSTs have to be there for students 3 to 8. Kate, help me if that's been corrected with the new guidelines. Is it still 3 to 8?
I'm sorry.
The OSTs for the ELAs, grades 3 to 8.
Yes.
I believe that is the current info. And the K3 reading diagnostics, your sub-scores by grade levels need to be included. Your ELAs, you've got to include those OALPA scores. The alternative assessments need to be in there. And any other benchmark assessments you've got. We will go through with examples. And not only will we be sharing it, we want those of you on your side of the screen to share what you're using. And we will get into that in, I think that's day 2 or day 3, where we actually break that down and you bring that data with you, and you'll be sharing with those of you who have maybe the same type of assessments. On our next slide here, the internal and the external factors contributing to the underachievement of reading. This part I love. It gets to that root cause analysis. It's you going back from that on the ground, in the hallways, in the buildings with all the students, coming up to that 30,000 view. What is going on in our district? And, you know, our children aren't making the progress they're supposed to make. Why? We continue to ask why on that. Some of the factors we might want to consider here, factors to consider, but not admiring a situation. Just considering it and getting it down. And this is why it's so important that you have representation from all stakeholders and all demographics. Because if you have just got your group of leaders or your informative clique, if you will, you are not getting information from everyone. So what type of instructional resources and practices are in use? What's the adult implementation data? What's the adult implementation absenteeism information look like? What kind of professional development have you provided, and how was that selected? What is the culture of the buildings? What kind of teacher turnover are you looking at? What kind of admin turnover are you looking at? And then some of those external, I said chronic absenteeism and mentioned it's not just the student absenteeism. What about your teachers? What about your support staff? Access to preschool and kindergarten readiness. That's why we're looking at those pre-K, we're including that. What about migrant populations, economically disadvantaged? Do you have students who've been loved in a different language coming to you? Those are all considerations. We're not admiring any problems, because in many of these cases, like students, bilingual students, that is not a problem. That is a blessing. So let's just get this stuff out and take a look at what we can use to help us solve problems and what kind of problems may need some more attention. Thanks, Nick. And I'm not even certain if Nick is running the slides, but that's going to be our cue. Thanks, Nick. It means to move it on. All right. So that root cause analysis, I'm sure you're all familiar with this. You have got to include that in there to provide that learner performance data. And like we said, what are those factors contributing to low reading achievement? And this is where we're going to find some of our goals that we're going to take apart and actually give you action maps with time and responsibility in there, along with evidence-based practices to correct it. It may seem daunting now, but I promise you, in all the raps that the 3 of us have written, you take it step by step. We'll be there right alongside you. Look on the screen. If you can't see a face, you see a name. They will be working with you. And then we have got, as you all have all the hotlines to OD or DEW with your emails and such. We just spent the last 3 or 4 days in Columbus with these people. So I don't know about you two, but I made it quite a point to let LM and some of those people know when you see my name come through on a question, I want an answer right away. So we can help you with some of that. If we go ahead and look at that root cause analysis, what we're doing here in page 13 of Ohio's plan to raise literacy. So if you're questioning, what's this root cause? I'm not comfortable working with one right now. Tag page 13 or stick it on a sticky note, and it's going to take you through that team process of identifying where those breakdowns are, whether it's a process or maybe it's a system breakdown. And then we're going to find out what's that purpose, continually asking, what is it? Looking at what's in our sphere of influence and acknowledging what may not be in our sphere of influence. So we're not going to close our eyes to it. We're just going to look at it all and determine what kind of changes do we need to be made and who are the people that need to be at this table to help make those changes. Thanks, Nick. So an example of it, and this is actually from a few years ago with a district that worked very, very hard on this work. We're going to look at a 5 whys model or maybe that fishbone method. So your problem statement might be something like, at the beginning of the year in first grade, 62 of 65 or 95% of our students are at risk in the phonemic awareness, an early fundamental reading skill as measured by the phoneme segment fluency test. And then it's actually one of the models that I think it is so graphic, and you put this up on the board, old school on the whiteboard, or go get some of that old bulletin board paper, and you actually put this up here. Why didn't the students, why didn't they get what they needed? What was the problem there? Why does it matter? Click. So because they didn't receive the adequate or enough information in kindergarten on this, click. Why didn't they get that? Click. You can continue clicking till the end here. So it's those questions, and that's where you need the next one to stop. Thank you. That's why you need all stakeholders and all demographics at the table. This is not something that can be done in your office late Friday afternoon or at your home table on a Saturday afternoon. You really need everyone in to give you these answers. And we will help you through this process, because it can get out of hand with a lot of admiring the problem, if you will. This is not a place to point fingers and place blame. It's just to get that information, to light that information so that we can kind of get in there and see what's happening. You will have the templates will be available to you also. And if you have another system that you and your team are familiar working with and are more comfortable with, we are not saying you have to use this fishbone or the 5 whys. Bring to us. We're open to it. You may have something that works better for you. So let's see what you've been working with.
So Pam,
any questions at this point on that, the third point, Tuan?
I have a question. So then I know you gave us, that's a great example. So our question, everybody would have the same question or no? Like, why is reading, why are we not making progress and is there a same question and then diving down to the root cause, or it can be any?
Thank you, Tuan. No, that will be by district or LEA. It may even be with your groups you're working with. Just coming from an RTFI yesterday or the day before out in the district, and Lee, hats off to you in Ravenna. It was an amazing experience with 3 elementaries going through it simultaneously. The information that was brought up and the questions and the comments from those RTFIs, that's where you're going to start looking at your individual root cause. So Tuan, thank you. Great question. And we will be here to help kind of filter out and maybe put a spotlight on something you may have been living with and don't even see it as a problem any longer, or maybe don't even realize there's a problem. With the 3 of us and the other, 30 some professionals on this team, we can look at it and start asking some of those questions. Maybe this is the issue. Okay. Section 4.
Are there any other questions or comments before we move on?
Nothing in the chat. I do want to say Kate had raised the point in terms of including data that ELA2 and of course, exam for high school would be important data to include also as you're painting that picture.
Very good.
To go off of what Pam was just talking about is once we have used our data and we have determined where we need to focus our energies and attentions on, and for what groups of learners. This is where we're going to develop our performance goals, our adult implementation indicators and goals. So we will have those measurable. So they need to be smart. You know, they need to be strategic and specific. They need to be measurable. They need to be ambitious and realistic and time bound. All right. So once you've identified whatever those areas are, then we will create a SMART goal around it. And as we're thinking about that SMART goal, we need to make sure that we are including all kids. So how are we going to make whatever we're going to do to enhance that learning where we have a gap? How are we going to make that accessible to children with complex needs? How are we going to make that, how are we going to grow the kids on the other end who are gifted so that they don't remain stagnant in their learning? Okay, so we're going to use all of that data, all of the good, rich ELA data that you're going to get, as well as the internal and external factors as well. One thing I was on a training that to just kind of back up just a little bit, it was kind of interesting is that once we have an intervention determined that a child is going to receive 30 minutes of intervention 3 times a day using this curriculum, etc., that looking at your school schedules and you're looking at snow days and you're looking at assemblies and you're looking at all kinds of other things, how many within the school schedule, even taking absentee out of it, how many times are they missing that intervention because we've scheduled on top of it other things? So that will be another thing to consider as well. And it's not just the student data. So we also need to, which is also sometimes people think of this as a little prickly point, is that we really need to look at our adult implementation indicators. So is whatever interventions we have chosen to use, is it being implemented the way it was designed? Are we keeping that fidelity of implementation? Or do our teachers need more training? Or do they not have enough time? Or what other factors are going into it so that particular intervention or instructional strategy is not being implemented the way it was designed? So here's an example of what they might look like. So we're going to increase the percentage of learners meeting or exceeding 3rd grade proficiency tests from blank to blank by the spring of 2022 as measured by Ohio State tests. So obviously this is an old example. A sub goal of that might be to increase the percentage of kindergarten students meeting or exceeding targets for phonemic awareness from blank to blank by the spring of 22 as measured by, and then we would insert that reliable, valid screening data right there. So when we're looking at our 3rd grade data, that's really an indication of what's happening in preschool through grade 2. So we can't really look at all the interventions we're just providing to our 3rd grade students, although that's important. We need to back the train up a little bit and to see what is causing that problem in 3rd grade so that we can address it so that it is no longer a problem. And as we're thinking about that, we want to make sure that everything is aligned. Is this aligned to section 3 where we got to the root cause? Is this aligned with the big ideas of reading? Is it aligned to our other goals so that nothing seems separate or siloed? Keeping in mind the changing emphasis of the big ideas. All right, so where are we putting our emphasis? So if we're talking about phonemic awareness, that is a huge emphasis in kindergarten, in 1st grade. But by our standards, that is a skill that should be mastered by the middle of 1st grade. So beyond the middle of 1st grade going forward, that now becomes an intervention because that should have been mastered in tier 1 instruction back in kindergarten to the middle of first grade. So there's going to be a heavy emphasis on that in those grades, but that's going to change as we get into first, second, and third grade. Now we're really getting into phonics and multi-syllabic words and connecting to text. That's where our emphasis is going to lie. So when we're thinking about that, are we adjusting what we're doing to the changing emphasis so kids are where they should be at the current grade level that they're in? And then adult implementation sample goals. By the May of 2024, 100% of kindergarten and first grade teachers and administrators will have completed Heggerty training, with teachers providing daily Tier 1 phonemic awareness instruction encompassing all components of phonemic awareness. Notice that we're adding leadership into this, because if leadership is not involved, it is going to be very difficult for them to be the instructional leader and to provide that guidance and push to ensure that that's happening across all classrooms. By May, the second goal is by the May of 2024, 100% of building administrators will conduct bi-weekly walkthroughs and collect adult implementation data on phonemic awareness instruction. So often this lies with the teachers, but our instructional leaders that live in buildings are also responsible for this happening within their buildings. And so leaders also need to hold themselves accountable to help provide the supports to their teachers. So if they're seeing in their walkthroughs that, boy, teachers are really struggling with a certain component, then they can go back and think, all right, what do I need to do to support my teachers so that this can be happening in their classrooms? And the third example is by May of 2024, 100% of kindergarten and first grade students, including students with complex needs, will have access to evidence-based phonemic awareness instruction and show growth of at least 10% as indicated by the universal screener. So we have very, very specific goals that we are acting on and that we can provide evidence that yes, this has happened. And as a result of this happening, this is what we're seeing in the learning outcomes for our students. Any questions over this section?
So I have a question. So in the reading achievement plan, if I said we started like transitioning to structured literacy, like introduction of the science of reading, all of that back in 2018, 2019. So in the adult implementation, there would be some things that we've done, like the Heggerty that you just had at the example. We did the training in 22, 23 for all of our teachers. Can I include that in there, or is this just only the most recent of this year? Because it's like a story. You know how we started, we had Heggerty, then we had letters training, then ELP on board this year. I just want to make sure, is the adult implementation only referring to this current school year, or can we have it for the previous years? Because it all connects to our initial initiation in 2018, 2019, when we worked with Stephanie Van Dyke, leading up to where we are today with pre-pandemic.
I actually think that's a great question. Personally, I do like the way you worded that. It's part of your story. And I would say that that would be a good introductory paragraph to, okay, this is what we have done in Akron. We started back in 2018. These are the things we have done, giving it kind of a synopsis. And so this is going to be our focus going forward. And then you can really get specific with those particular goals, because you already done that part. So we don't want to state that again, other than in the context of this is your story and this is your journey that you're following. Does that help?
Yes, but then in the adult implementation, can I list that in the adult, you know, like 100% of K1 was trained in 2020? Can I list that under there too, or no?
Okay, so I'm going to bring my colleagues in on this as well. I believe that the adult implementation indicators should be going along with whatever goal you have selected for this purpose here. We're going to assume that that happened in your historical story that you're telling. And if you, however, if you see that you need to revisit that and that is going to be a goal for this time, then I would say you could put it in again if it needs to be. Pam, what is your thoughts on that?
I definitely think, like Twan, as you said, it's our story. I definitely think you should include that. And that can even be one of your action plan SMART goals, where you say what we have done in the past 2 years, how we've come to that consideration that we've needed to do this. And Twan, this is where you include that when we offered it, how many additional teachers, wanted in on it, and how many actually, although I think I'm remembering correctly from conversations that maybe all of your teachers didn't have to go through all 8 units of letters, but how many opted into that. And I would even include, get some of your letters presentations, presenters, how your teachers are so that active participation and the level of knowledge in the trainings now. So show that progress that you've made.
I was seeing another question in the chat. Just for clarification, are you talking about the requirement for the new science of reading PD as far as the professional development modules aside from the original dyslexia requirements? Just for clarification.
Yes.
Yes. We have not been made aware of specific timelines, but believe you me, we've been asking. So we have not been given a timeline on when that's going to be released. I know they're in the works and they are working on those, but no, we have not been given a timeline. So I'm very sorry. Go ahead, Debbie.
Well, when we talked to the department, they just said they're putting those into the wrap so that you have an understanding of what is coming. There's no expectation, because there
Right.
can be, because they're not even ready to go. But it's just to make you aware of what is coming down the pike, so it's not a surprise when it is there.
I agree with
Yes.
you. It would be nice.
Kate or Debbie, would you like to share the information yesterday that we received from the department about leaning into the unknown and how this is our opportunity to learn more until all of this comes out? I'll let one of you share that message.
I think I had left for my children's conferences, so go ahead.
Yes. Well, the department is well aware of some of the roadblocks we have, and because of the restraining order that was put on, they understand the stress. Believe me, they are holding more stress than you are right now. They will work with you. If
Right.
you have individual, concerns on this where it is really an issue, reach out to one of us and we will put you in contact with those that can, if not give you the answers, which I know they won't be able to, will maybe at least assuage some of your stress.
They did do a nice job while I was there, acknowledging the frustration, right? You see this on here and then there is that roadblock. So in our small group, they did definitely acknowledge that with grace and patience. And I do appreciate that. And I know on our last literacy network meeting, just Ellen Clinton just taking the time to be here for our region. I really did appreciate that. So I do think, why don't we just take a 5-minute break? You guys have been great listeners. So let's just take 5 minutes and maybe come back. I don't know.
And after the 5 minutes, Twan will answer your question, and
Yes.
any others, drop them in the chat. And I think a 5-minute break is a good idea, Kate.
Yeah, so we'll meet back here at noon. Thank you. And yes, I'll answer this question too, Natalie. Thank you.
Kate or Debbie, do you guys want to stop the recording?
Chrissy, if that's not good, just go ahead and pop
No,
on.
can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, so no, that's perfect. It was just when I think it was Debbie who was talking about the changing emphasis, and that's where our issue lies, that, yeah, it should be able to go to intervention. It just can't, our numbers
Exactly.
are so big. So I'm excited to hear that the plan will help us really focus in on the adult implementation that we need to happen. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for asking.
Twan had asked more of kind of like a submission format question about whether or not it was going to be turned in as a PDF, and can hyperlinks be included in the plan?
I think that might be a tech question for RAPS. Actually, it's amazing that hasn't come up yet. I know
believe they
that there were
can.
there were attachments in the last round of this where you could add things, but that is something that we can go ahead and ask. And anytime there's a question, we have no problem submitting it, but the more that question is submitted to those state emails, that's where they get the FAQs, the frequently answered questions, but it also lets the state know, wow, this is a real issue that we have forgotten on this. So the more that question is asked, the more apt they are to go ahead and tweak and change and give that advice to us. So Tuan, I will ask it, but I'm definitely gonna invite you to send that question in also.
Right, because I think when you put like a timeline or you share something on your plan, if you put a link on there, if people who are reading the plan can see it. Otherwise, I don't want to have to be taking a snippet picture of the plan and, putting things in. If I can link it to say, here's the timeline or here's the plan, they click on the link and it's there. You know what I mean? It would be
Yes.
a really nice thing. But if you send it as a PDF, I know that you can, then I don't want to put links in all that, we're putting links in, and then if we have to send it as a PDF, then they can't open it anyways.
Exactly.
I will say though, keep in mind, I know there's some guidance with like 25 to 30 pages, and the department's going to be receiving, plans from, a lot of districts too. And so they don't want it to become so cumbersome as well. So they want you to tell the story, but don't feel like you have to like overload with submitting so much either, I know there was some guidance with like how much to submit, and so I had received some questions about that with districts as well. So I should have maybe got clarification on what type of links, because they won't have time to like dig through a lot of different links, if that makes sense either. So
I
I know
wondered
some
about that.
people have done some snapshots and like insert some snapshots of their data and things like that. You don't have to do that, but I know some districts have done that.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
So Dr. Nguyen, has been doing this work, for so many years, and she brought up that point about linking in the historical nature of when we started the work. Is that what the state wants, or do they want to just know our problem and here's our solution for this year? I think that was what Dr. Nguyen wanted to know earlier. Do they want to know the historical, or do they really just want to know, here's what our data is and here's our plan from jump, right now? Because we could give you 50 pages of our historical story. So if that's not what we need to do, that's going to save us a significant amount of time to go back and link in 5-6 years of historical information.
I think what they want, Christy, thank you for asking that clarifying question, and Tuan also. I think what they'd like, they don't want 50 pages of your history, but I think it is important to tell the story that in this year, this is where we were. We've decided we're doing this, this, and this. Look at how far we've come already. And this is why we're continuing on this path, or this is why we're switching that plan. So that could be, I believe, answered in a quick paragraph or so. We don't need the, the entire novel, but we do want to know the trajectory.
Currently, right now, I only have it less than a half of a page for that section. It's not, very small.
Certainly.
The only other question in the chat right now was about that December 31st due date, and since training in the template is just now being provided in holidays, is there any possibility of an extension for that?
So the deadline stands. We did ask that question as far as the December 30th goes, but if there's a concern about being able to submit that, then that question would go directly to the department.
Okay, thank you. I'm just being realistic with trying to pull best practices and pulling all of those stakeholders in and scheduling that with Thanksgiving break. And truly, the December 30th really isn't a date. It's more like a December 20th for, everybody goes on the holiday. So that doesn't really give us a whole lot of time to pull all those stakeholders together to truly work on it. So.
And that is why, as soon as that template came out, Pam and Kate and I immediately started putting this together in a timeline that it will be finished before you go on break. And it's going, we are not sugarcoating. This is going to be a lot of work. This is going to be a heavy lift between now and
understood. We're not even able to attend all the sessions. There's other things, you know, so understood, totally appreciate you offering these and scheduling it that way, but we're not even able to make all the sessions, so due to other commitments, but thank you. I will send that question to the email address.
And we were
And-
recording, if that's helpful, so that, and putting it into the Padlet, so that if you need to refer back, you can attend, and maybe we would answer some of the questions that might come up with your team, but we'll record and put it in there for you.
In
Also,
addition,
If
this
there's
has to be
other,
board approved, correct?
excuse me,
Repeat that, Maureen.
The board also has, yeah, Maureen Bussinger from School Sponsorship. This also has to be board approved prior to submission, or is it permissible for the board to retroactively approve it after it's done in December?
That would be a local decision.
Thank you.
and if you, Natalie, if you can't attend the session and want us to look something over, I'm happy to, we're happy to do that too, Sarah or I.
Yes, thank you.
That's
That's
helpful.
probably what we'll do. Yeah,
That's no problem.
thank you.
Sure.
And Kate, to that point, that's the three of us are here as your regional early literacy specialists, but you have ESCs also that should be able to provide support with this. So you are not alone on this. I appreciate that deadline coming down like a train, but you are not alone in this. And as Debbie said, we've really looked at this to get it. It's heavy lifting, but we're here to help you. And we've got some dates and, the recordings and the extra sessions. So
Yeah, it's really not about, honestly, that part. It's just, I'm just being honest. It's about trying to pull all of the people in district to do it the right way and not do it in an office with a small, with just a core team. It's scheduling it with the proper stakeholders to do it the right way. With the timeline that's been given.
And
And I
those of
really
you that
appreciate your comment.
we do, but those of you who have worked on these before, and so many of you said that, we're revising them. If you were up against timelines like this, what were some of your creative solutions for getting input from teams? If, the times were so tight and we realized with scheduling and subs and, stipends and such, does anybody have any creative solutions for that you've worked with? I think everybody, or Nick, you can share that chat if you'd like. Jen. Jen, would you like to share something? One of the creative solutions I found the last go around with these reps, there was the group that worked together, and then things were sent out electronically for approval. One group actually took the reading achievement plan, got together in one board meeting or one meeting in a big boardroom, and we did sticky posters. And you have section 8, you have section 7, you have 4, you have 3, get everything you want on that. We'll come together. So everyone worked on it. We parsed out the work and everyone saw it and approved it. But the same team did not work on, deeply on every single section. And that seemed to work and certainly helped that district make the deadline. Okay, are we
I
good
would
to go on
agree
to the
that
next
being
slide?
well hydrated and being up on your fluid intake, because you'll need a lot of energy to do this. So
Well, it is not that bad. I've worked through it with the district. It was fine.
But drinks and food always help.
yes,
I appreciate the humor.
It's funny.
I will need bail.
And money.
Nick, yeah. Nick, can you share that?
All right,
yeah.
let's move forward. So everybody, I know it's 12:15. People haven't had lunch yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and move forward. Just talking about the action plan. This is kind of thing we're getting into where rubber meets the road, right? So we have our goals. And as we move forward with the goal and action map, so for each one of your goals, and you need to have more than one goal. So you should at least have 2 goals moving forward. And you're going to want to be thinking about the timeline. So you don't have to have a timeline of like things do not need to happen in 1 year. So just keep that in mind that you can have this over, a couple of years, but you're going to want to make sure that you're timing out your action steps that are going to go along with your goal. So your action step in each map should address supports that you have. So if you want students to decode words, what will you do? And you're going to include a description of professional development activities for each goal. And then you're going to think about who are the persons that are going to be completing these action steps. And this is where you're going to include this information in section 5. And then after you do that component, you're really going to move into section 6, which is going to talk about how you're going to be monitoring your action plan and your strategies. So this is the progress monitoring piece, which is so important because a lot of times we put things in place and then it just goes by the wayside. So how are you going to really monitor your plan that you've developed so far? Is it going to be teacher schedules, lesson plans, walkthroughs? What evidence is going to be collected in your plan and which times, how often? And again, all of this should be in alignment with the science of reading and you've used your approved screeners. We've talked about diagnostic and it's all going back to your data. So this is where you're going to be really specific. This is where powerful conversations are going to be had. You're going to be looking at your resources that you already have in place and what you're going to need as well. So I think when I've been working through this with the districts, this is where a lot of powerful conversations are taking place. Pam and Debbie, I kind of just jumped through that really quickly as I'm talking, I've noticed. So do you have some things that you would like to add with that?
Kate, I agree with you. And I think this is where it is going to be so important and less work for you if you're making certain that your interventions are on DEW's approved list, but that also any of these action steps, especially at that instructional level, is an evidence-based strategy. You're just going to get more bang for your buck doing it like that.
And that's where we're gonna have to live because those lists are not out yet. Well, I guess intensive interventions is, but the curriculum is not, which Pam is going to cover later. So that's the area where we have to just live right now.
I think too, what I'm finding too is that our teachers that I've been working with are thinking about additional assessment data. Is it telling us what I need? Do I have too much? Am I collecting the right stuff? And so those conversations are kind of coming to the front too. And then also those materials that are being used too, like excess materials that aren't in alignment with what the fidelity piece and implementation. I know, some districts have just adopted new material and there's other stuff that's kind of foggy when there's too much being used. And so we've been talking about those pieces and components as well. And that's where that professional development piece is coming in as well with the districts that I've been working at. There was a slide in there. I think I might have moved it as far as those practice guides and strategies too, Debbie, but it may have got misplaced. I think is that on slide 40? We'll get to it, but there is the IEC practice guides for strategies. So we'll talk about it when we get to it.
So what you're saying about 2 goals, that's kind of makes me worried about, like I have 5 things on my plans. I may have to talk to Pam or someone else, at the end. I don't want to take people's time and your time because I have, and then under each action steps, I want to make sure because as I'm working on the plan that I'm moving in the right direction. So I'll have
Tuan, we will definitely make sure.
And keep in mind too, I mean, are you including like all grade levels, like K-12? Are you including, again, bringing in that preschool component? And so I'm saying like a minimum of 2. And you want to make sure like what you're putting is attainable. Like we don't want to put too much where we can't get it all done, but 2 would be the minimum. I mean, I've had questions like, can we just have 1? The other piece to consider too is some people have done one overarching goal, and then they've done sub goals where they've broken it down by grade level, where they may have one and they put in kindergarten, in first grade, in second grade. So that's one way you can do it. Or you don't need to do it that way. You could just have just goal 1, goal 2, and goal 3. So there's no wrong way to do it. It's a local decision on how you want to set up those goal structures, if that makes sense.
Right. So currently I have 5 goals, but I'm going to change it. Like, I'm just going to give you an example of one of my goal. Okay. It's to increase PK3 teachers' knowledge and skill in the teaching of reading. And then I have it letters training through the lens of structured literacy. That's one of my goals.
So if we go back to that, that could be an adult goal, where you could be thinking about like a student goal, and then maybe the adult indicator, you may include that as an adult indicator, but what may be your student goal, if that makes sense. So I'm thinking about how are you going to measure that teacher knowledge piece. So you may want to have a student goal, and that could just be your adult support, if that makes sense. Kind of like what Debbie was talking about.
You're saying student outcome based
You
on
could
the
do a
adult.
student outcome goal, but that could be your adult implementation goal.
Right. Because of the adult, I monitor what they do and what they perform in letters. It's a huge task. So I set a goal of getting 90% or more in there as they're learning the letters content. So I have that, I monitor that. So I know they have achieved the learning aspect. But I get it, what you're saying, the kids also have to go, if they're learning it, can they apply it with students to get the outcome?
So maybe you have a student goal, yes, and then that's your adult goal that they've completed it. But the evidence could be a structured literacy lesson, like as evidence, structured literacy as evidenced in their lesson plans or through walkthrough data. You can include that maybe in your action map, if that makes sense.
And Kate, this is the area where we've got to remember, this isn't just one little piece of your district's plan or your LEA's plan. This is, look at your one plan. Those of you who are working with SST or state support teams, you've got service delivery agreements. Look at that for what are your student outcomes at that point. All of this should have, it should all be part of it. Those of you who have participated in RTFIs, this is where all that information comes together. So this isn't just one other thing out there. All of this comes together. So keep it all married.
You have really great thoughts. I'm excited, like as during our work sessions, like you're thinking and bringing your team together. And so you're on the right track. Like, that's great. Okay.
And again,
Any other-
that's where this is so valuable, that you are all part of this network now. You are going to be learning from people like Christy and Tuan, who have already walked through these, fields, if you will, and have kind of found where those potholes are and what to do. So use the knowledge out there. And your ESC should support you also on this.
Nick, are there any questions about these 2 sections?
No, we've covered all the questions so far.
We do need to make sure that the template, that we do send the template to the ESCs. They weren't on our training PM. So we just want to make sure that we do get that information to our ESCs.
Okay.
I did link the template and the Padlet in the chat, and I also threw in the email address for any RAP questions for the department. So
Thank
those
you.
are all in the chat.
Thank you, Nick.
I'm also going to throw the sign in for those of you who joined late. I'm also going to put the sign in the chat one more time.
And just a real quick reminder, that is why it is so important that you register through whichever region you came through. If there's any issues with the link at the last minute or more information, that is the only list we can go through. So even if you're in a room with 2 or 3 other people, the only people that will receive the information are those that are registered. So make sure you're registered or get yourself signed in. Thanks. Okay. The expectations and supports for learners in schools. I don't know this, I love the picture, but the empty bench there kind of makes me nervous. You're not alone in this. We're going to help you. We should have like a whole bunch of people sitting on that bench. We're going to help you out, and look at your Brady Bunch screen. Look at the people next to you. They're going to be able to provide support also from their experience on this. All right, we're looking at those actual strategies to support students now. And again, if you'll notice, it talks about evidence-based strategies. Those are actual strategies that have been through scientific research with different demographics and different size groups. We will find those in those IES practice guides that Kate had talked about. We don't want to overwhelm you in that last half hour today. All of this will be available to you on the Padlet if you want to work ahead, or in our following work sessions in the next weeks. The big thing will be choosing the curriculum, and those instructional materials and interventions from the department's approved list. The intervention list is out through the dyslexia laws, but the other approved list you've got the knowledge now about structured literacy and science of reading. So if you've got a program that is not hitting those 5 big components, the phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, comprehension, vocabulary. If you are not looking at that, if you are looking into a program that is still based in a 3 queuing system where we're making a lot of guesses, then we need to talk. Those are some concerns that you probably won't have, they probably won't be approved. Also, there's that bit about RIMPs coming down in House Bill 33. The RIMP will now follow your students, not just till the 3rd grade guarantee, but every year on until that child proves proficiency or proves reading at grade level by a proficiency score on the Ohio State tests. There's still some questions that needs to be, filtered out on that with the older students in their tests. And it's not all of your teachers 4 to 12 have to write RIMPs tomorrow. This year, we've got it till 3rd grade. The following year, it'll be your 4th grade teachers who will need to continue with students on RIMPs, and then the 5th grade. So this is coming down, but it's a little bit smaller or slower, bolder, if you will. And your teachers will have time to get that education, so they'll be able to write the RIMPs. And again, your ESCs and SSTs are available to help you with those RIMPs. Thank you. Ensuring that effectiveness of improving upon the strategies. Describe what you've done that's differently, and how are you going to do the things, like how will you know it's effective? How will you show progress? How will you be able to improve upon those strategies utilized during the 2 prior consecutive years? So this is where Akron, where they say they've been working on this, this is where they can say, this is where we started years ago. This is what we've done so far, and this is how we're going to either continue or make those changes on that information we've learned. Moving on. Okay, some of those considerations for the adult implementation here, because we know that learning is really not so much about the student learning, it's more about putting that mirror on your instructional piece. What are we teaching? How are we teaching? And only then can our students learn. So we need to look at some of those strategies there, such as those evidence-based practices. We're not talking programs. Programs and computers do not teach your students. It's those strategies that you're teaching them and they can apply. What about ensuring that effectiveness, improving on that? How is it going to be different from what we've done before? Again, it's not just giving them more of the same thing or giving the same thing in a smaller group down the hall. What's going to be different? And then that professional development. How are we going to not only first train, but how are we going to sustain that training in our teachers? What are those fidelity checks? How are they going to be refreshed in that training? How are they going to be kept up on the latest in research in reading? Okay. Your staffing and professional development plan. What is that going to look like? And again, those better include evidence-based strategies. It's not just, picking, I want to send them to this, we're going to send them to this. There needs to be a plan that will tie right with your goals. So under House Bill 33, the second bullet here, all districts and schools shall require that all teachers and administrators complete a science of reading professional development course developed by the department no later than June 30th, 2025. Our questions are wondering, will letters training be involved in that? Will the dyslexia modules be involved in that? Those are the questions you're going to want to send to the RAPs, the RAP email that Nick so kindly added to the chat. That is the information DEW needs to know, lots of people are asking. It's not just us in our meetings. What are you going to do about this? How soon will they know for planning and budgeting purposes? And then we know that so far, all through the dyslexia laws, all your K-1 teachers should have been through at least those 18 hours of modules. And then that moves out up through second, third, and your intervention specialists. All right, your staff development plan. Remember that ESSA criteria, it can't be a one and done. You've got to have that sustained, intensive, collaborative, job embedded. Where's the data that said they actually needed this training? And how is it focused in the classroom? And then just an aside here, because we know how tough it is to get subs in training, what about making some of your natural leaders coaches? You've been through this training, share it with us at your TBT, share with your other teachers in your team what you've learned and how you're doing it. So that's where we can get really creative when we work with you on those plans, how we can get some of that training embedded as we're looking at such limited resources and time. And I think this slide, if it were a smaller meeting, I'd have you all on mute for the next slide and read this aloud with us for the next slide. Oops, this is not this slide. You don't have to read this. This is the one that Kate had been talking about, those IES practice guides. They're linked in your Padlet. It's the all means all. It's every single student that belongs to each and every teacher and administrator. Do we have those accessible assessments to measure even the most diverse learners? How are you identifying those barriers for students to achieve reading? Have you addressed the barriers? What are your plans then for addressing them if you have not yet? And have you considered some of those supports from general education and specialists to support those teachers and students? So again, it's not this teacher, this child goes with them, that's their teacher. It's all teachers, all students, all admin. We're really a village within those buildings. So every student belongs to each teacher. Thanks, Nick.
Any
Are there any
questions?
comments or questions at this point, Nick?
There was a question from Tara. Does this mean, just talking about section 7A with the strategies, does this mean we will have this approved list by the deadline to complete 7A? And then how about the dyslexia 412 modules and where the timelines are with those?
Okay, those dyslexia modules, we can link that to the dyslexia guidebook and the dyslexia website. Those modules are out available already in the LMS system. And I believe someone, maybe Kate, was talking about that in a little bit later. So those dyslexia modules are out. If you have K-1 teachers, by law, they were to have completed those by August of this year. And I forgot the last part of the question already.
The modules were specific to the 412, which I think we're still waiting on.
Yeah, I know that the facilitators have gone through their training, so those modules will be out. But again, those evidence-based strategies and the approval, you can start doing some of that pre-work, knowing what structured literacy entails in the reading science and what are the programs that you're looking at, what are the training, what type of training does your staff need, and just being aware that it's coming down.
Kara, does that cover your question answer? And then Dr. Shelley had asked, so this plan can only be a K-3 focus. I think you guys addressed that at the very beginning, but maybe go back over it.
Kate, do you want to expound on that?
Yes, so can be, yes. I think the words that they use was like gold star more, and just showing that you're thinking about the entire district was kind of the encouragement. If that helps.
I also think you need to think about as your district and where you're at. Like maybe thinking pre-K through 12 is too big of a lift right now. So if maybe you need to just keep your focus for this year and getting this plan written for pre-K 3 with the intent that since it is a living document, that we're going to move forward and add the adolescent piece as well, as quickly as we have the capacity to do that within our unique districts. So you have to
And if
kind of
you-
look at where you're at. I'm sorry, Kate.
No, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. When you are looking, if you do look at the adolescent data now, you also can be thinking about, because you are going to be putting in the timelines and you know that there's going to be an expectation for some adolescent training. You could put the timeline for that training at a later date, and still include it in your plan as well. So that's one way that you could do it. Really good questions.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll go ahead and move on. Okay, so we have a, Kate, do you have the link for this by chance?
We may need access to that.
We have a sample local literacy plan for you to take a look at for just a few minutes. This is not meant to be an exemplar. Okay, so I want to make sure that we're very clear on that. It is not an exemplar. What we're doing is we want to look at this particular local literacy plan, and it is made up. But what are the strengths of the plan? What are the weaknesses of the plan? Where could you see improvements could be made? So as soon as we have the link, we'll drop it in the chat. But if you could take a moment and read it over.
Can you see if you have access to that? Sorry to interrupt.
Not yet.
Were you able to open that, Nick?
I was not. I know that I was in the Padlet, and I'm going to see, because you guys have that in the Padlet as well.
And Kate, looking at the time, maybe we can even just give them access to look at this on their own and take the next, and it's up to you all. But if we take the next 20 minutes or so, if there's any more questions, and then possibly give you time to look at that plan and come back with questions, we'll make sure you have access to it.
I actually like
Would
that.
you rather take the time now? Those of you out there, would you rather take the time now to look at it, or spend some time on your own to examine and gather your resources?
If you could put it in the chat, that would help us to know what direction to go.
And just for clarity's sake, that it is in PDF form on that first column of the Padlet that is available to everybody.
In our next sessions, they are designed so that there is more time for you to actually work, and we will not be talking at you for 2 hours. This was just kind of a general overview, that 30,000 look, so giving you ideas of what you need. We will parcel out the work so that you can work on your own. That's where you can do the looking at your kitchen table on Saturday morning. This is what I need to do. Bring it back to your group, and then bring it back to us, and we will all together look at it.
That did work that time, Kate.
Okay, Nick, are we getting any feedback on examining it now or independently?
We got one vote for debriefing to look at it on our own time. So, so I guess one vote wins.
But as I said, next time, the next sessions are designed so that you really have time to get into this.
It is good to look at local literacy plans and get ideas and examples,
Yeah.
and they are posted online. It is hard just to, be on an island. So I would encourage that.
And if in the Padlet, I believe there's an exemplar plan from the last go around of RAP requirements from Westerville schools. I don't know if it's still public on the DEW website, but I will clarify, or I will definitely check and make sure that Westerville plan is available. As Kate said, rather than starting with a blank slate, if you see what someone else has done and you can just kind of pop in your information and get some ideas, that might be a easier way to start.
And
we'll
even
try
though the
to get
template's
you-
new, the content the content is the same, so don't let the section numbers confuse you.
Mhm. All right, and then looking at our next steps here, registering for your morning or the afternoon session on the 14th. We've got, Kate was wonderful to create that s'more for regions 8 and 2. And Debbie, how will they get through region 1?
We have a flyer that was sent out to everybody with all the links in the registration. So
Okay,
we'll
and then
send
do
it
you
out
want to take
again
us through the last few slides?
with reminders.
All right, it will also give you time to determine who's going to serve on that leadership team. Who would you like to serve? Who can actually serve? And one of the things, it's called a RACI model, but you actually, when you're putting these people's names down, what are their responsibilities? What is their accountability? What's the communication with them? And kind of just informational, why are they on there? Are they a person that's just going to, sign it off in the end? Are they actually going to take a piece or part of this plan to gather the data and work with you on it? So think about that with your leadership team. Then looking over your current improvement plan and those equity efforts, we've got some links there for you. And gathering the materials. This one you might want to take a screenshot of. This is the kind of your homework, which will give you, we're going to give you a couple minutes to work on it now. Since nobody knows you're not done before 1, you have time to work on this. Gathering some of this material, whatever district improvement plan you're living with right now, your 1 needs assessment, your actual board plan, a local literacy plan, you'll want to gather your student performance data. And as Debbie made a great point, pre-K 12 is the gold standard. If that is too big a leap right now, let's look at that pre-K 3 and get an idea where we're starting. And then certainly that relevant data. What about your attendance, the students and the adults, your behavior data? I don't think we can use COVID any longer, but other things out in the world that may be affecting you. So these links aren't going to help you because they're on the slide, but you've got live links through the flyer or the s'more and through the Padlet for the next sessions. And this is where you are more than welcome to bring your teams along with you. Just make sure anybody who's going to need access to material or credit or time actually signs in with their email on the registration, only for communication issues.
I also
Let's
want to
see.
talk about here that we are offering morning and afternoon sessions. You're not signing up for both. It is just trying to accommodate your schedules. So for example, on the 14th, the content that we're going to cover on the 14th will be exactly the same in the morning as it will be in the afternoon. So you can kind of look at your schedules and, hit the link for whether you're attending a morning or an afternoon session, but they are exact copies of one another. Be the same conversation, not both. Any questions before we head to the surveys?
We had a question about if you could post the things that they will need for the next session again.
Absolutely. So we really want you to have your team selected by the 14th if you haven't. And then that 3 is making sure that you have all of your data collected and bring it to the table.
It may not be a bad idea before the 14th of the next session with your team, once you've gathered this data, if you share it with those team members so they're familiar with it and don't have to explore it for the very first time during that meeting. Again, that's a gold standard. So if they have a chance to look through it, give it to them ahead of time. If not, we will certainly work with whatever we've got next session.
Okay, with that, I'm going to move ahead. Any more questions, Nick? Okay. All right, so however you registered for this, we have different survey links. These are important for our data at SSTs.
Sending it to the
Um,
other guy to see if he can open it.
Go to the three buttons though.
Okay.
So if you can just hit the QR code for your region and take that survey, we would really appreciate it with whatever region you registered with.
I don't see the notes in this one.
Kate, you're
Kate?
on mute. You're not muted.
Great. You're gonna be so excited because I'm getting ready to share the presentation with them. Sorry.
And with that, we are done. We thank you all for attending and your great questions and conversation. And we're looking forward to seeing each of you on the 14th.
On the Region 8, I don't see this meeting scheduled under there. When I went on to the survey, this isn't the choice.
It's under, Tuan, I think it's 18 writing wraps,
Okay, all right.
but thank you.
Oh, that's not.
Kate, that just is to my recent page on my drive.
Right. Do you want to post that? Did it go straight just to the, did it go only to the one-page PDF?
So it went to my personal Google Drive page that has all of the recent documents that I personally have opened.
Ooh, Nick, while you're helping Kate with that, I'm hearing from Region 1, there may be an issue accepting responses on your QR code.
That,
Well, let me check it. I checked it last night and it was working. Let me try again.
what
Thank
I'm
you all
saying,
for your time, and we will hold your hands and help you through this. We realize what a stressful time this can be, but it's also an exciting time because you're making those plans to really raise just the liberty of every single child in your district. So thank you for being with us, and we'll see you again on Tuesday. If anybody's got
Yeah.
any questions, we are here for you. So we will stay on. Otherwise, sign off, gather your groups and your data and your coffee or tea, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
I'm trying to get them a copy of the presentation, Nick. So but when I click on it, it's going to my stuff. So I wanted to
And
see when
we'll put
I
that in
sent-
the Padlet too.
Okay,
Yeah, we can publish this. I'll publish it now and add it to Padlet.
Which they have those links, so that should be good.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I could take care of that. Not a problem.
All right, ladies, do you guys need me for anything else?
oh, you're fabulous. Thank you so
Just
much.
who's saving the recording in the chat? And
Oh yeah,
Nick,
stop the recording.
thank you.